Hi everyone, my name is Jen Stewart and I'm a member of the Give Back Yoga Foundation team that's helping to create this course. You're about to listen to a recording of my interview with Kelly Boys, which took place while I was in Kenya and Kelly was in the US. Kelly is a Hatha Yoga and certified I-Rest Yoga Nidra teacher, and she's also a certified Search Inside Yourself teacher. Kelly has worked extensively in the yoga service space, working in the field of trauma-sensitive mindfulness, teaching meditation to U.S. veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injuries, as well as to women in prisons, cancer survivors, and those with substance abuse addictions. Here you're going to have the unique opportunity to hear lots of Kelly's wisdom, as well as her thoughts around mindfulness and wholeheartedness in yoga service. So Kelly, if you could just introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Sure. So I live in Boulder and have lived all over the world and have been practicing yoga for over 15 years. I'm a certified yoga teacher. I'm also a certified yoga nidra teacher in the I-Rest model, the integrative restoration, and have been part of training about 1,000 teachers in yoga nidra. So I love that work. And right now I'm writing a book on blind spots, actually, through a publishing company here in Boulder called Sounds True, and am hosting a year of mindfulness with them as well with, Jack Kornfield, all the major kind of meditation teachers that are out there. So that launches in February. I'm really excited about that. And I'm also working in technology and meditation. So I'm working with a couple meditation apps right now, and have been heavily involved in the yoga service world with the Prison Yoga Project. Have worked in San Quentin State Prison for a couple of years with the founder of the Prison Yoga Project. And then have just worked with veterans with PTSD and brain injury over the course of the last 10 years. Worked in a lot of different sectors with yoga service. And at the moment, am more just writing a book and working in tech and not right now doing any yoga service stuff that's in terms of the prisons or anything like that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're so excited to have you contributing to this. And we're hoping that the learners can now understand why we approached you to speak a bit more about mindfulness. And so my question for you is, what got you into this type of work? And what is it about this work that really lights you up and keeps you engaged every single day?
Mm-hmm. Well, I got into this work because I was suffering. And I imagine many of us do, not all of us. But I got into the work. I had anxiety. I got into yoga, Bikram yoga, in Vancouver, Canada, about over 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it really saved me from something that I was going through. And, since doing Bikram yoga, I did vinyasa. I got my teacher training in vinyasa yoga and then moved into the yoga nidra practice, which really just changed my life. I was motivated by just having anxiety and experiences that I couldn't otherwise integrate in the sort of talk therapy realm or just working stuff out in my life. I felt like I needed to get into my body and I didn't know how, and my path was through yoga. And so it was really, so I would say more of a desperation or suffering that drove me there. I wouldn't have said that at the time. I just popped into a yoga class. But I think that's what was underneath, and that was what was transformed through the practice.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. A lot of the interviews that we're doing for this, teachers who have been working in this space for quite some time share that same sentiment, that it was their own experience of how yoga transformed their life that really got them into this work and keeps them going. Mm-hmm. So bringing us into mindfulness and kind of the main topic of this podcast interview, can you share with us what your understanding of the practice of mindfulness is and why you feel it's important in yoga service?
For me, the practice of mindfulness is it's a way of being, and it's a way of orienting to your life. So some of the qualities of mindfulness are that, in a way you're kind to yourself, not from a place of I have to be kind to myself, but from a place of a natural kindness and love that emerges when we're really meeting our life on its own terms. And we come to see, I've come to see there's really no other best way to meet the experience of life as it comes to me, other than with kindness, because that tends to it brings in the heart. I think it should be called heartfulness, really. And it starts to melt ourselves into the experience, whatever it is that we're having that could be challenging. Some of the other qualities of mindfulness are, just present moment attention, present moment, non-judgmental attention. And, that's just so much easier said than done. Our minds are built to go back to the past and to jump to the future. And what the practice of mindfulness does, or what meditation practices and yoga practices train us for, is to continually bring the mind right back to the present moment. I like yoga because it brings the mind back to the present moment through the body. Mm-hmm. And sometimes some of the mindfulness practices can seem disconnected. They're not necessarily, but they can appear that way, especially if you're just sitting on a cushion. And yoga helps us get somatically right into our bodies and say, what's happening right now? And, I just sat with Sharon Salzberg this week. She's done a lot over the past 40 years on the loving kindness practice. Yes. And she said, mindfulness helps free us from the burden of manufactured angst. And I love that because, we manufacture our own angst. I like that Radiohead song too. You do it to yourself. Yes. It's nobody else, right? And at the same time, bless our hearts. We're also innocent. Our brains are actually wired to learn from the negative. We know this from the research on neuroplasticity, which a lot of the mindfulness work points to, and basically says, you know what, you can train your brain for the better. But this isn't I just want to emphasize this point. It's not to become some perfect idealized version of ourselves. It's rather to actually learn to meet life on life's terms, find an appropriate action for the moment, and have more heartfulness or wholeheartedness. And just one more thing about mindfulness. When I was working in Google, so one of the first engineers at Google, he's like the 107th engineer there. So he's now retired, early retirement. They call him the Jolly Good Fellow. His name's Meng Tan, and he wrote the book Search Inside Yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's a play on the Google search, but it's for engineers at Google, for them to search inside themselves. Mm-hmm. He had this aha moment when he realized that mindfulness, he read, sort of the basic definition. It's non-judgmental awareness in the present moment. And he realized that was so similar to the definition of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And self-awareness is the first pillar of emotional intelligence as defined by Daniel Goleman. So the neat thing is he kind of drew that parallel and then told those engineers at Google, and now it's gone outside of Google around the world, which was what I was part of. And basically saying, hey, we all know self-awareness is really important if you want to be emotionally intelligent in your life and the workplace. The way to train for that is using mindfulness. If you use mindfulness to understand your inner landscape, then it's really kind of the same thing as training for self-awareness. But the quickest and most profound way to do it is through the practice of mindfulness and meditation. So that was his kind of aha moment and his way of linking those two, which ended up getting Googlers all over the world to practice meditation. Mm-hmm. And I would also say that, meditation being equated with mindfulness, mindfulness being equated with self-awareness, that self-awareness is a trainable skill. And, it's not just a matter of some people are born that way. They're more kind of in tune with themselves than others. No, even a software engineer at Google, even someone in the prison who I've worked with, and everyone in between can get to know their inner landscape, their thoughts, feelings, emotions, motivations. And what that does is it sets us up for more compassion, more empathy in our lives, which has radical kinds of implications. And the other thing that I think is neat about the work of mindfulness is it basically says, like Suzuki Roshi said, who's a Zen priest, you're perfect just as you are, and you could use a little improvement. And I think that that's so true, to start from a place of wholeness, which yoga helps us do as well. Like seeing we're already whole, we're already free. It's what we believe in that is the block between knowing that. And so that's the improvement part, is what yoga takes us through, is looking at our limiting beliefs, at the sheaths or the veils of illusion that we live from. So it's a lot to say, but that's, what I would say mindfulness is. It's a way of being a non-judgmental, heart open, connected with oneself and the world around you. And the way to train for that is through yoga, through meditation practices, both attention training and also awareness and inquiry practices.
Kelly, you shared so many amazing points through that, and thank you. And my question for you, you talked about so many things, but one thing really stood out to me about knowing this inner landscape, knowing your inner landscape. And I'm wondering if, given the importance of knowing that inner landscape and that self-awareness, if you could tie that back to an experience, maybe when you worked with the Prison Yoga Project or when you were doing an act of yoga service, and why, or if you felt, knowing your own inner landscape or you had a high level of self-awareness during that time, why that was important.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so key. And I think it's so key because of the fact that, if we're not in touch with ourselves, we're certainly not going to be in touch with another. And we think that we are. I think that's the tricky thing about our minds and our beliefs. And we can be, and I will get to a story, we can be motivated by our ideas, defending kind of a sense of self against the world. And then those actions and behaviors that we take may look very beautiful and like I'm serving others, I'm saving the world, but actually we need saved, and we're out there projecting it onto the world and then going to go save all of them. Well, and we've left ourselves. And I can say that I was very involved in political science and that kind of thing in university and thereafter, and I was just so highly motivated. I studied third world development and, all the stuff that was kind of going wrong with the world. And I was going to go fix that through microlending and this and that. And I knew I was an expert in my own mind, as far as I thought I knew what that looked like. And I knew that those people over there needed help from me. Of course, I would not have articulated it that way at the time. But that was the motivation. I actually needed help. I had been married at age 18, divorced at age 21, incredibly abusive marriage. I had PTSD myself. And I was just out there trying to help. I'm just going to, help the world. And I hadn't looked at myself yet. And interestingly, and I do think this is how it can happen, it didn't work. I didn't help many people. I didn't also try that hard because as I got into that process, I realized, I kind of, or life helped me realize I needed to look inside first. And so I pivoted. I was getting my master's degree in Germany in peace research and security studies. And I pivoted from that, came back to the States, found Yoga Nidra. And through that process, it showed me how to inquire into my inner landscape, how to get to know myself, and how to look at those beliefs I was holding. And as a result of that, and I can share a bit more about that, but going through, some years in that process, I started then working in prisons. I first worked in a women's prison. I had no idea what I was doing. I just walked in and said, "Can I volunteer? I teach yoga, and I teach this thing called Yoga Nidra." And the next thing I knew, I'm in a women's prison, and there's 50 women on thin mats on a concrete floor, and all of the guards right behind me, and I'm teaching Yoga Nidra.
Wow.
Yoga and Yoga Nidra. And I knew at that point that I didn't know what I was doing. And I think that was a really key insight for me. I knew I let go of needing to be an expert in anything.
Yeah.
And when I did that, amazing stuff started happening and has continued to. And it's been a long process of that. But I think that, the importance of doing the inner work is you see all the places that, that are unwelcomed, as they're as of yet unmet in ourselves. We're always a process. We're always learning. So there's no perfect person on the planet, including the Dalai Lama or whoever. And so what I discovered was it's more about the orientation, inward orientation of learning, of curiosity, of meeting myself, meeting those places in myself, not wanting to be judged by someone. For instance, how many of us, teaching yoga, we don't want our students to be unhappy. Well, what do we do in order for them not to be unhappy? We abandon ourselves sometimes, and say things or do things way over the edge of our own boundary in order to in our head do something that's going to please another person. And the process of the inner work and self-awareness and mindfulness is walking that back slowly all the way back to the point where did I get to ask very gently, where did I leave myself there? Where did I go away from my inner knowing because I was trying to stay in connection or trying to be loved or trying not to be hated, or in other words, defending an egoic kind of separate, isolated self that needs defense. So it's important to look at, why I'm doing what I'm doing, as a yoga teacher in the yoga service. What motivates me to be here? Can I be honest with myself? See all the wonderful things that brought me here, and see my own shadow, see what it is I'm trying to heal through another person, and bless my heart. Okay, let's do the work, but I'm going to, be sure to attend to myself first, not out of selfish reasons, but because that has more of an impact on the flip side for the other person as well.
That was really beautiful. And you're touching on a lot of the points that we really want to get across in this module as well. So thank you so much for that. And, directing people back inwards as they think about why they're in this work. And you touched on it perfectly. What is their shadows too? But I love that you also tied in, what are all the incredible, amazing reasons that are having them show up? Because there's both sides that are there. And
that's right.
We're firm believers too that the self-awareness to see both sides is really what's going to create something magical as people get into this work and they really think about who they can show up and who they can be in this space.
Absolutely. It allows for creativity and possibility. When we're not tied into an idea of who we think we should be, it just opens the door on so much possibility.
Yes.
I do feel, and when we see where the places we get stuck, where we tend to identify, is it in the yogic sheaths, it's the body, the senses, the emotions, the thoughts, and then the sense of self. Where is it that I get stuck most? Oh, I get stuck on anger. That's mine. Well, mine personally is anxiety. It's not anger. But we all have all of it inside of us. And if I know the place where I get stuck, I can, I'm just more sensitive to it. And if I can really truly welcome it, not as this, oh no, that's the bad thing I do, but more as like, oh, bless my heart. How is that reminding me to come back home? Like that's my little messenger there of anxiety saying something's off and come back home. What is it pointing me to? And I love that with yoga, the sheaths of yoga, the koshas, they both hide our natural state and they reveal our natural state. So everything is workable. Everything is a messenger back home. There's nothing that's, outside of how things should be. I think, was it Byron Katie that said something about, when you fight with reality, you never win. It's true. It's just true, and how do I see my struggle with life, but embrace it, see where I struggle and give myself that tenderness, that kindness and compassion and learn from it. Kind of dismantle this idea that I need to be a perfect whatever before I can do something good in the world. No. It's more, am I able to meet myself? If I can, then yes, go into the world, do whatever. We all mess up, we all fail, we all succeed. And it's a playground in that sense.
Yeah. And I really believe if you take that practice inwards and you can show up with yourself with that love and that compassion and that kindness, when your shadow might be showing up or whatever it is that comes up that could point you back home, I think you can show up that way with other people as well when they might be in their stuff.
Absolutely. Then we don't refuse the other person. I mean, it's so significant to be in the prison. I'm like teaching in San Quentin State Prison with James Fox, and to have, someone share what they've done, to have, Roberto, he's since paroled, but he was in for, I think, 25 years. And, so he gang murder 2 people, double homicide. Yeah. And this is a person that's right next to me on the mat that have a lot of respect for. He's done an incredible amount of work over the course of time in the prison. He's just a beautiful soul. Yes. And here he is saying that he's taken another life. And if I know that in myself, and not that it's happened, but that hatred or whatever it is, the wish for harm for someone else, then I'm not going to, in a way, flinch and ew, you're bad. Yeah. It's like I can actually see and meet that moment of that person sharing this thing that they had done. And not, first of all, holding them responsible, but not refusing them, because I can see, when I see my own wholeness, I can see someone else's wholeness.
I wanted to ask you about wholeheartedness, because I know that in your work you speak to wholeheartedness, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say wholeheartedness it's not perfection, so yay. I don't have to be perfect in order to be wholehearted. Okay, that's a relief. Get that one out of the way. For me, being wholehearted is being willing, open, curious, available, loving what is present. And I would say that it has a lot to do with inhabiting our authentic selves, that wholeness, our natural state, and from that place being open. And when one has that kind of wholeheartedness, which has a feeling of capacity and of willingness and willingness to meet life on life's terms, as we're talking about, then it what happens in the world of kind of yoga service or just in your life is things feel like they have a lot of possibility and a lot of flexibility. And when we know that we don't know, we can wholeheartedly be present to a situation because we're seeing it really for what it is rather than for what we want it to be. Mm-hmm. And so there's this natural kind of integrity that emerges in your being when this happens. And so, yeah, in terms of the wholeheartedness, I think there's something very innocent in each of us that gets called forth when we're sitting with another human being or working with them in a way, teaching yoga, whatever it is. And it's our natural innate capacity to actually be in integrity, aligned, to feel authentic, and to be present to the person or the people that are right in front of us. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a way of engaging with the world that doesn't have these veils, is very willing for them to appear because it knows, oh, this is just another gift. What action is being called for? Okay, I'm meeting this here. But the orientation of it is one of heart open, undefended. I don't need to defend myself against anything. I can actually be this open in the world, and I'm safe to be this open. Mm-hmm. This doesn't mean, throwing away my boundaries or anything like that. It just means like I can, like if you see a little baby or a little kid, they're just so in a way vulnerable, and helpless. They need their mom. I used to work in nursing on the mother baby floor, and I'd give the newborn babies their first bath, and to just have this little tiny human being look up at me was like, I think it's one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, in a way that's each of us. Yeah. Wholehearted, open, undefended, vulnerable to the world. Here we are, like, oh, wow, and to be able to actually navigate life in that way with appropriate boundaries, taking actions that are appropriate to the situation is the gift of wholeheartedness and the gift of yoga and the work of meditation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. What happens when you're working in the yoga service space and maybe pulling from your own experience or pulling from what you now know to be true for you? What happens when your ego shows up or your critical or judgmental mind?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, it will happen. So what to do when it does? So when your ego shows up or the judgmental mind, when you're in a yoga service environment, and there may be some pressure to show up in a certain way. Mm-hmm. So how do you do that? Well, number one, welcoming. How can I not refuse this right now? And in other words, how can I welcome this thought, this emotion? It could just be, you're teaching yoga to youth in schools, and you have a difficult interaction with the teacher, or one of the kids is acting out and you just don't know what to do, and you're starting to just get really pissed off. Mm-hmm. And you think, I shouldn't be pissed off because I'm a yoga teacher and I need to be perfectly happy. Well, there we go. We're working with the mind right now. And so number one, welcoming. Okay, I'm experiencing this. This is the judgment. This is the thought. This is the emotion. And just letting it be here for a moment and still engaging. So, an important thing is when you're doing this inner work, you can still be having a conversation that is triggering you, and inwardly you're welcoming your experience. I'll bless my heart. Okay, I'm feeling really hacked off right now. Okay, this doesn't feel right. Something's off. Okay, all right. I'm still talking. I'm still engaging. I'm still teaching yoga. I'm still in the middle of my yoga class. So I'm still present to what's happening. but there's a way that I'm starting to get close to my experience. So number one is welcoming and getting close to the experience, letting it be there, not refusing it. And the next thing I would say is when you have time. So it may be after the fact. It may be after you've left the yoga class, and then you go home and you sit and you really look at what that situation was, and this sort of self-awareness and mindfulness practices to work with. What was that judging thought? Oh, interesting. That happened last week too when I taught that class. I just feel like I shouldn't be there. My belief is that I shouldn't be here. I'm not a good enough teacher. I've studied with all these amazing people. I don't even know what's the whatever bone and this and that, and so in that moment, what we're looking at, besides just welcoming what's present, is we're actually using the insight practice of what's the message here? Okay, I feel like I'm not enough. That's actually what this all boils down to. And so how can I work with that judgment and work with that mind that comes up while I'm teaching, and keep welcoming it, keep listening, because I trust if I do that, I will get to the nugget of wisdom that it's trying to share with me. And that is not just the judging mind that I need to get rid of. This is actually a message that if I actually don't stop and listen and welcome and inquire with, I'll pretty much always have this in my mind for the rest of my life. Like, I mean, some of us have these, I'm not okay, sort of, my basic core negative belief would be, I'm not okay as I am, how I am in the world is not okay. And so if I haven't worked with that, then it's going to basically always be there, because it just wants to integrate. It's just a young part that says, hey, am I okay? Am I okay? Yes, you are. So in other words, I think a really important thing besides welcoming of working with the judging mind is seeing those judgments, seeing that egoic movement as sort of younger parts that are asking for some attention. It kind of takes some of these inner voices that we have are internalized from our parents or from a caretaker. And so really teasing that apart and getting clear on what those voices are and what's true about it, what's not true about it, can help it just to be more in the background. So the next few weeks when I'm teaching, I start noticing it more. Oh, wow, that happened 20 times during my class. I thought I'm not worthy to be here.
Yeah.
Well, the more I'm aware, the more, check me out again in 3 months. And if I'm so aware and so welcoming of it, likely in 3 months from now, it's just going to be a slight voice in the back of my head. It's okay to be there. It can come and go. It doesn't hold the charge that it held before.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like that was a really practical way that a yoga teacher, if they go into a class and something is coming up, that they could kind of hold it and see if they could walk through those steps and what shows up for them when they do that. So thank you.
Great. Yeah.
I just have one final question for you here. And feel free to tie this back to what you would tell your younger self or what advice you would give given your experience to date. But that question is, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in this space? They're really interested in it. They've done their yoga teacher training. They know that they want to be able to really give back. What advice would you give them?
Go for it. You don't have limits. There are no known limits. The only limits are the ones that are manufactured by you and those around you. And to really go for it, because I've gone for it, and I've found out that it's all doable. I just felt I'm going to want to work with veterans, and next thing I knew, I was at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in DC doing an internship with their Wounded Warrior program. And if I would have gone by the limitations of the VA system, I never would have taught within the VA. But I kept going back for a year and finally got into my first residential traumatic brain injury and PTSD program and started teaching there, all volunteer. And then I saw, after teaching women in the prisons, I thought, well, why not teach men? And it was the one step after another step. And now I'm doing some really exciting things. And I would encourage you and say, just go for it. There's nothing to lose. There's literally nothing to lose other than all of the things that you need to lose anyways, which are your, notions about who you think you are, your ideas that were placed in you from your parents. Those might all go. And that's quite a process. They might not also all go, but some of them. And so in the process of going for it and just living, it's like we're all given this, but I wouldn't say I have some certain belief about how the world works, but I do see again and again, we all have this, the I-Rest work with Richard Miller, who created integrative restoration, a form of yoga nidra. He says, heartfelt desire. Everyone has a heartfelt desire that is pretty much the same over your entire life. And that could be for you, to give back in a way, but what does that come from? What's your motivation for that? It's usually quite beautiful when you get down to it. And so I would say, go for it. And there aren't limits, and you will lose a lot, but there will be a lot of things that you didn't need anyways, and that were additions into your life from the outside. Mm-hmm. And you will gain a lot of knowledge and insight and wisdom in just taking the steps. And one other thing I would say is let yourself have an accurate self-assessment. In other words, balance is really great. So if you can see your gifts and your skill set and your strengths and everything that you're just wanting to bust into the world with, great. And see that, let yourself see, I'm new at this. I don't know what the heck to do. That will actually completely free you up, because it gives that balance of, well, I don't need to be more than I am, because I'm don't really know much. So I don't have anything to lose. And it can actually propel you into these exciting places and circumstances because of your own, I would say, wholeheartedness. Mm-hmm. And it's an exciting place to be when you're just getting into it, and when have been in it. Like, I'm excited where I'm at, and I think it's the beginner's mind thing. And if you can keep that as you keep learning and growing and stepping into whatever it is you feel called into, and let yourself listen to that call, go into nature, listen to the natural world, meaning not like a tree's going to talk to you. Maybe it will, but I don't mean that. I just mean that the world around us, it shows us how to be ourselves. And so listen for that, come from a wholehearted place. And, it's just like the sky's the limit type thing.
Beautiful. Kelly, you are such a rock star, and it has been such an honor and totally my pleasure to speak to you. And I want to thank you so much for contributing to this program. We're just, we're really, really excited to have you on board and as one of our contributors. So thank you so much. We hope that you got a lot out of Kelly's podcast. We're very grateful to her for her contributions to this course. Below, we've got some thought starter questions to get you reflecting on what your learnings mean to you personally.